All right, live from the recording studios in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a Saturday. It's my last recorded video, and I'm excited. It's global contemporary art. Some of it will be a review for some of you. Some of it will be brand new. So let's get started. So El Antasui is a artist from Ghana, but he's lived and worked most of his life in Nigeria. And this is one of his famous textiles that's made out of bottle caps, uh, Western brewery beer caps. So it is a little bit of a conversation on colonialism. And one of the interesting things about him is that he does not give instructions on how his textiles are supposed to be hung. He leaves that up to the curators. And he is one of the most talked about artists in the contemporary world, for sure. Then here's Marlene Dumas. We've looked at her as well. She's from South Africa. This is a work based off of a photograph of her in her class. She's a white South African, and in probably one of the most revered female figurative painters today. And this gives you kind of a sense of the scale of this painting. And then this is a little bit of a newer piece. This is her portrait of James Baldwin, of course, one of the most famous African American intellectuals and writers of the 20th century. All right, and now we're looking at a work from William Kentridge. We've also looked at some of his stuff. And what's he's famous for is he'll make a drawing and then he'll take a picture, and then he'll add to the drawing and take another picture. So it's stop motion animation. And a lot of his earlier works have to do with the fact that he was a white South African, and that his parents were both lawyers who worked against the apartheid laws. And he's now very much broadened his artistic practice. He is very famous now for doing the costumes and the artistic direction for operas. And this one is called The Nose, and it's based off of a Russian literary piece. Okay, now we're going to move to Zanel Malahuli. I'm trying my best to pronounce everything correctly. I looked all these up on the computer last year. And she is known for her photographic self-portraits, as you see here. And then she's also of the LGBTQ community and has taken a lot of photographs of LGBTQ people in Africa, and it's gotten her into a lot of trouble. At some point, the South African government erased one of her computers. And then we just saw this one very recently, but these are newer. I guess we didn't see these two, but this is a part of something we've talked about before when we talked about photography. These are two works in her Miss Lesbian series, Amsterdam from 2009. And it's her. And yeah, so there you go. Okay, now we're looking at somebody that I am just so crazily interested in. I have the catalog of the newest show. When I first arrived in the Twin Cities, I went to the Walker and I saw this incredible model of a city done by this artist, and it's pronounced Bodies Isaac Kinlasis. And he makes these architectural models out of a lot of times out of things from the common culture, but he goes beyond that. And so this is an example. I don't know if it was this exact one that was at the Walker. And so I kind of lost track of this guy, but I was always really fascinated by these works. And then just, I think it was now 2 years ago, MoMA had a major exhibition of his works. He's deceased. He's from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and he's somebody that you should really look up. He's amazing. And then here's another one. I know it wasn't this one because this is a little bit more colorful than the one I saw at the Walker. Okay, now let's look at some African artists who are working in the United States. This is another one that we've seen before, and this is one Jetchi Mutu's Rising Death in My Sleep. And she is from Kenya. And as we've talked about before, a lot of her works reflect Afrofuturism, which is the idea that that literature and film and art of the future will focus in on African and African American artists and writers, or the world is sort of encompassed in that world. And probably one of the most famous people in the Afrofuturism history is, of course, Octavia Butler. I highly recommend her novels. And then this woman is getting a ton of attention has been getting a ton of attention over the last 5 years. This is Junji's Crosby's painting. And what's interesting is she takes photographs. She's from Nigeria, and she takes photographs from her family and her family's past. Her mom was a politician in Nigeria, and then she incorporates them into her paintings in a collage process, which you can see particularly on the couch and the curtains. All right, and here she is with one of her more famous paintings to the right. Okay, now let's look at some Black British artists. Black British artists are people living in the UK who have history, family history going back to the African continent. And we're going to first look at somebody that we've looked at before. He is from Nigeria, and this is Yinka Shonibare. And he's really multifaceted. He's a sculptor. He's an installation artist. He's a 2D artist. And I would say he's one of the most famous artists working today. And here we're looking at something that's on the 250 actually for AP Art History. This is his take on Fragonard's The Swing. And then I love this. This is a piece that actually was in a show that we weren't able to go to because of the COVID-19 outbreak. But he took a lot of books and recovered them. And the actual designs are from what's called Dutch prints. The Dutch tried to have it become popular in Southeast Asia. It didn't take, and so they took it to Africa, and these prints are very much associated with African culture now, even though it was a colonial move on the Dutch's part. The Dutch part. And anyways, Shonibare. And then he has MBE next. It's Master of the British Empire, and he considers that to be very satirical because he's a Republican, which in England means that he wants to do away with the crown and create a republic and not a constitutional monarchy. This is a work by David Ajay, and he is right now probably the most sought after one of the most sought after architects in the world. And this is his design for the National Museum of African American History and Culture. As you guys know, I've been inside it in June of 2019. And the outward beautiful exterior is based on some West African aesthetic, a West African aesthetic. And that right now, he's creating the new Studio Museum of Harlem building, which I can't wait to see. It's going to be pretty incredible. Okay, and then another Black British artist who I don't know as much about, even though I have a catalog of her work. She's from Nigeria, Otumba Gnas, and this is called The Weight of Scars. And then Lynette Yodom Boki is a Ghanaian artist, much like El Antisui. And she, in this particular work and some other works, is talking about stereotypes of Black British people in the United Kingdom, and images that have come from the common culture, racist images from the common culture. And then Sonia Boyce is getting a lot of attention as of late. There's been an exhibition of her works in the United States just recently. And what's interesting about her, for people that love painting, she doesn't look at sources. So she doesn't look at an actual model. She doesn't look at a photograph. And she does her paintings quite quickly, sometimes within just a day. And that in itself, I think, is pretty amazing. We just got done looking at Renika Dijkstra's work. She's from the Netherlands, but I don't think we saw this one. This is her self-portrait after having a swim. She was, I believe, in some type of accident. I think it was a car accident, and to get herself back to being able to be independently mobile, she was swimming a lot. And then this is a work, I remember this so vividly. Again, I was at the Walker. I don't think I had moved to Minnesota. I think this was something like 94, 95. Well, it'd have to be actually 96, 97. So I did see it when I first came back. And what she did was she went to these British dance clubs, and then she had young people either dance for her video. Well, I think they all just danced, yeah. And it's a part of a video installation that the Walker owns and other museums as well. And it's pretty darn interesting to see these young people dancing by themselves. And then we have already seen this one. Remember that she did a series of photographs of women right after having given birth. Sorry for that hiccup. Okay, we're still in the United Kingdom, and we're looking at female sound and media artist and one sculptor. And first, we're going to look at Susan Phillips. She's from Scotland, and she is a sound sculptor, believe it or not. She has been getting a lot of attention over the last 10 years. She won the Turner Prize recently, and a lot of people really like her sound sculptures. And then this is work by Tacita Dean. She's probably one of the leading media artists working today. And this is called Ship of Death. And it's looking at the refugee crisis. Gillian Waring is somebody that has always fascinated me. So you think you're just looking at a young woman here in this photograph, but actually Gillian Waring is 40, and she made this sculptural mask of herself as a 17-year-old, and then she put her face through it and then took the picture. So it's her eyes, but everything else, I think it might be her ears too, but everything else is fake. And she's done this sort of mask series quite a bit, and is a very interesting person. Okay, so this is a work by Sam Taylor Wood. She's known more or less for her photography, I think, more than anything else. And this is called Bram Stoker's Chair 2, which I'd like to know a little bit more about. All right. And then this is a very famous work by a UK artist named Rachel Whitered. And what she did was she took an abandoned apartment building and filled it full of cement from the top, and then took the exterior of the apartment away. So what you're seeing is basically a negative space concrete sculpture, which is what she's mostly known for. Okay, then let's go to the European continent. This is Olafur Eliasson's and he's getting a lot of attention, and he's from Denmark. And oh, sorry, that's wrong. This is Ragnar Kartusen from Iceland. I screwed up. And I just sent this image as a postcard to a friend of mine, actually, weirdly enough. And he's known for his conceptual art that often combines interests in music. I'll just say that. And he is red hot these days as far as the art market. Okay, now we're going to the European continent, to a Denmark artist named Olafur Eliasson, and this is one of his most famous pieces. This is a slide which is at the Tate Modern in the Turbine Hall, and you indeed, as an art patron, could go down this slide when you visited the museum. That's a lot of fun. And then this is a work by someone in Finland, A.G. Lisa Attila, and it's called Scenographer's Mind. One of my favorite artists, and we talked about her just recently, is Papalazzi Rist. This is her most famous piece. This is a film still from Ever Is Over All, and yes, she is going to crash into this car's window with what looks to be a glass flower. All right, then we're going to head to the Middle East. I've talked about Shirin Neshat so many times now. I'm not going to apologize for it because I love her work. And this is from one of her films, Rapture. And remember that a lot of her works have to do with gender roles in Islam. And then this is one of her newer works. I think we might have seen this as well. It's from her Book of Kings series. She took a very famous illuminated manuscript from Iran, Persia at the time, and then places it, I believe, through some sort of computer process onto the bodies of people. And then these two I didn't know about until actually just last spring. This is Joanna Hodge Thomas and Khalil Juriz, and they made this series called Wonder Beirut. And what they did was they took postcard images of Beirut, Lebanon, and then put in destruction of Beirut, which happened during its very lengthy civil war. So that's kind of interesting. And then this is somebody that I've given out a homework on this person, but I didn't this year because I did it so many times last year. This is Sophia Al-Maria, and she's from Qatar, is how you pronounce it now. We used to pronounce it Qatar. And she's interesting. She is the offspring of an American woman and a nomadic Bedouin man. And she was mostly raised in the United States, but she has incredible connections to her father's home country, and her works deal with that duality. Okay, and then we have talked about from South Asia, from Pakistan, Sikandar's work. Remember that she was traditionally trained in Pakistani miniatures and then has really blown it up into video pieces that are quite colorful and still show the influence of her early education. And then this is one that's definitely a little bit earlier, from the 90s, which I think we might have seen in class as well. Okay, Imran Qureshi is the artist here. This was a piece on the roof of the Met in Manhattan, the Met, of course, being perhaps, it's the most famous art museum in the United States, at least, one of the most famous in the world. And what they've been doing over the last 10 to 15 years is they have invited artists to do something on the top of the building. And these are based on images from traditional illuminated manuscripts, and it's purposely is showing blood, which is showing the unrest and loss of life in the Middle East. They're just beautiful images. Okay, now this one, we're going to India now, and this is Anish Kapoor. If you've been to Chicago and seen the bean, the silver bean, that's the same artist. So here's an installation that he did in the Turbine Hall at the Tate Modern. It's a huge sculpture. That's primarily what he's known for now, is his large public sculptures. But he does a lot of kind of interesting conceptual work as well. And you pronounce this last name Sudup. And this is a work from India as well. It's called Terminal. It was at the National Asian Art Museum in Washington, D.C., and I believe it's connected to Buddhism. All right, now let's just go to straight up Asia. Let's go to South Korea. And for some reason, I don't have Nam June Pak's work here. Sorry about that. Or we'll see it in a few minutes. So I don't think we saw this particular photograph, but this is a work by a South Korean artist named Kim Soo-ja. And the Butari we have looked at before here. So there's this tradition in South Korea, because at times they've had to be very mobile, of putting their goods inside these cloths and then cinching them up. And then she just has done a number of different works based on the Butari, as you see here and here. And then remember, she did Needlewoman, where she goes all over the world and places herself inside crowds in foreign countries, and then people weave in and out of her. So she's the Needlewoman. And then this is another work of hers that's an installation piece. It's called Lotus Zone of Zero. I think it's quite striking. And there we go. Okay, now we're looking at Do-Ho Suh's work. And this is made out of dog tags, and it's a conversation about the fact that South Korea is a very militarized culture, protecting themselves against the communist North Koreans. And Do-Ho Suh actually did his service. I think it was a two-year mandatory service in the South Korean army. And a couple of his works, there's one of these is at MIA actually, and one is at the Seattle Art Museum. And so it's a traditional Korean robe, but made out of dog tags. And then this is another famous piece of his. So he hired some women, and he also was sewing as well, to create an exact cloth replica of his traditional Korean house. And then he folds it up and can put it in his suitcase, and it's been exhibited all over the world, and he's gone on to do other ones as well. And then I wanted to show you this. I was just so amazed by this piece. I have a niece who's at this college. It's a San Diego University. Anyways, you look at this, and it is odd because you're seeing that the house is sort of on its side a little bit. And then you look inside, and it just seems like a normal sort of house. And then you realize that it's over the edge of this building. I don't know if you can go inside. I suspect you can. And then this is this is how it looks to my niece when she's going across the campus. But this is another work by Do-Ho Suh. And then this is an earlier work that is a little bit smaller in style, and not in style, and smaller in its with inside a gallery. And so he's working with ideas of home, obviously. And then the last one I thought I would just show you, I think this is quite beautiful. This is a textile reconfiguration of a radiator. We have these kind of radiators in my home, so I was kind of drawn to it. Okay, let's see where we're going now. Okay, so this is a work from Lee Boole. And trying to think. Okay. Yeah, Lee Boole. And it's called Cravings. And then this is Willing to be Vulnerable, which I really like. I like this installation here. All right, now let's go to China. So I took Nikki Lee out. It's a long story. I don't want to get into it. All right, China, Ai Weiwei. This was on our 250 if you're an AP Art History. He had this one town for, I think, a couple of years make these individual porcelain seeds, and then he had them paint them. And so it's millions and millions of seeds that was put over the turbine hall. Again, we have a lot of turbine hall works. And it's probably his most, I would say it's his most famous piece. All right, and then this is a work by Kai Go Chien. And I always sort of think of him as the gunpowder guy. So he makes drawings by igniting gunpowder. Look him up online. There's a couple of videos of him doing it. And yeah, that's primarily what he's known for. He's a very interesting artist for sure. And then remember, we've talked about her before. This is a work by Cao Fei. She had this avatar named China Tracy, who is her avatar in Second Life. And she was making art in Second Life, which is kind of cool for video game players. I'm not one, but that's fine. Okay, the answer to the question today is this. So the grandmother that lived next door to me from when I was in third grade until I was in college, her first name was Bessie, and she was my favorite grandmother, and she was a wonderful person. Her name was Bessie. All right, keep going. All right, this is the very famous Propeller Group from Vietnam. And they are a multi art making type of art collective. And right now, I don't think they're still working together. Hopefully they'll come back together. And they did this really interesting video that I've seen at MIA before. So there's a tradition in certain parts of Vietnam of having a band play during a funeral procession. And so that's what you're seeing in the bottom right-hand corner. Yeah, and then let's talk about another Vietnamese artist. You guys, if you're an AP, know this. If you've done your homework, this is a work by Dan Vo. And the chandelier is from the hotel where the end of the Vietnam War was signed. And he was able to buy one of the chandeliers. And then the other objects in the room are connected to the fact that his family were refugees in Europe, and these were some of the first things that they acquired on the right. And then probably one of the most celebrated contemporary artists in the world is no doubt Murakami. And he really is a touchstone for this very interesting cultural phenomenon within Japan of being somewhat childish, and of course that's connected to Murakami's theme of the superflat, where because Japan is the only country that had 2 atomic bombs dropped in their territory, that there's a sort of infantile street fashion and overall just artistic style that is fun and so on and so forth. So this is one of his books, or this is one of his images. I like it quite a bit. And then I happened to see this at the National Gallery, believe it or not, in DC So he's very much sort of changing his style between this one is 2010 and then this one is 2014. So he's incorporating ideas about spirits in Japanese culture, and it's a little bit morbid and grotesque compared to some of his other stuff. All right, and then this is a work that was also in the 250. This is Mariko Mori's Pure Land. We've kind of already talked about her before. And then Tabemo is another one that we've looked at. She's a Japanese video installation artist. And then this is Rikrit Taranavit. And what he's from, this is interesting. He's from a Thai family from South America, but he's been working in the United States most of his life, and he's famous for making a Thai meal in his installation as a artistic work. So look him up. He's pretty, and he's very well thought of over at the Walker Art Center, that's for sure. Okay, now let's go to North America, and this is Rodney Graham's still from one of his very famous video installations. It's called Vexation Island 1997. And then Brian Youngin is a gay First Nations individual from Canada. And he's famous for taking Air Jordans and other shoes, or other tennis shoes as well, or basketball shoes as well, and creating what looks to be Northwest Coast masks out of them. And he's very much appreciated in the world. And then these are whale skeletons made out of plastic chairs and found plastic objects. I really love this piece. Okay, we're almost there. So this is hold on a second here. This is, now we're going to Mexico, and this is Damien Ortega's Cosmic Thing. And he basically took a VW bug and VW Beetle and picked took it apart, and it is a satirical meditation on the symbolism of mass production, Western mass production in Mexico. And I don't think we've looked at this photographer. So this is Daniela Rosell. And she did this photographic series that I saw at the Hammer Museum at UCLA. And she went and photographed all of these super rich women in Mexico inside their homes. And it's a very interesting series. And then last but not least, let's look at Doris Salcedo. She is very familiar to the AP Art History people. She's from Colombia, South America, and these chairs stacked between two city buildings. The chairs are supposed to represent the people who have been killed by the totalitarian regime in Colombia. And that's it. All right. What, 33 minutes? You guys can handle that. All right, we're done.